Hi, I'm Faith Rothberg, the CEO of College Recruiter. And College Recruiter is a job search site for students and recent grads to find employment. Today, we're going to talk with Pam and Amir about how intern managers can have success in managing virtual internships. With COVID-19, we've seen a lot of companies transfer from in-person internships, trying to maintain those internships, and so offering them remotely. So first of all, Pam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Amir.
Great. Thanks for having me, Faith. So I'm Pam Baker, the founder of Journeous. And at Journeous, we work with educators and leaders and teams to train them on adaptive communication, which essentially allows folks to be able to connect, communicate, motivate, and reduce conflict more easily. So glad to be here.
Cool. And Amir.
Yes, thank you for having me. Amir Badr, founder and CEO of Upkey. And Upkey makes it easier for students to transition into the professional world, and we help them with their career readiness and make sure that they arrive ready.
That's great. And Amir, just to tell our audience, you have how many internships that you're having this summer?
We're doing at least 1,000 new internships this summer for those students who've been displaced by COVID-19.
That is so cool.
All virtual internships.
All
right?
virtual. Yeah. Thank you and thank you so much for doing that. Anything we can do to keep some of these companies, these internships for these young professionals, young students, it's great. All right. So Pam, let me ask you a question first. What we've been hearing so far from employers is that roughly 40% of employers have moved their internships to virtual. And they're going to end up then doing it online. There are aspects of leading virtually in this current environment that are unique. So what are you finding in your work with teams now working virtually?
Yeah, so first of all, I think, hats off to the employers who are saying that we recognize the value of internships, not only for the benefit of the student experience, but also the value for employers in terms of a feeder pipeline. And then having a resource like Upkey for those organizations who say we just don't have the ability to shift ours virtually at this point in time, and knowing that that's a way to still offer students a great experience, I think is so amazing to see in terms of just the recognition of the value of those internships. Some of what, as you read through what companies are focused on to allow those virtual internships to happen, a lot of it is focused on how do I make sure that the technology is in place to support virtual interactions. And what we've seen in working with the teams and leaders that we work with is that yes, that's one piece of it, but that's just sort of the blocking and tackling. We're also seeing not only is this very sudden shift to virtual work creating lots of stress for people, but it's doing the management in a home where your kids are around and pets are around and all those other things is creating just a great deal of stress. And one of the things that we know is that stress has a tremendous impact on miscommunication. And so when you know that you are feeling some stress, knowing what to do about it so that you can prevent that miscommunication and conflict makes a huge difference, particularly for intern managers.
Yeah, that's great, Pam. And at College Recruiter, we've had all our employees work remotely. So I have learned over the years how to manage remotely, and it is different. It's very different than managing in the building, having someone sitting just down a few steps from you kind of thing. And and we do it in a way where we know we're doing it all the time. So we have set aside the proper room and space and things like that. So it definitely ups the stress and the game when now husbands and wives are working at home, and both of them, and they don't even have like an office space, and they have to kind of make it up. So
yeah, and
that is super
you can probably weigh in on, what you saw last summer as you were leading virtual interns as well.
Amir, yeah.
Was that a question for me? I thought you said.
Yeah. So Amir, like, what were some of the big things that you guys saw as you were leading virtual interns?
Yeah, so it's definitely different. And the advantage that we had, I think from day one, we set up shop virtually. So even kind of within the Upkey world, out of roughly our 20 employees, 14 of them were always virtual. And so from day one, a few years ago, we started building tools that help us internally and testing different ways of being able to just manage our own team, if you would. And the reason why we did the virtual program is because part of it was we had this amazing talent that was interested in working with us, but we just couldn't move them. We didn't have the budget to move them, and they wanted to do their internships, but they were all over the US, a couple international. And so having a virtual setup really helped us get a lot from the interns that would potentially be limiting us to the geographical location that we were focusing on. But it's definitely different. So one of the things we learned from the past few years is that you're going to need to have a lot more details and a lot more organizations for running a virtual internship versus, Faith mentioned something in the office. It's a lot easier being around people and seeing them and looking at their work and things like that. And so we really kind of worked backwards by defining what success looks like and what are all the baby steps we need to do to get there. And that's really what we're doing with this, larger scale virtual internships. It's like we're looking at what are the 3 outcomes we want these kids and the companies to walk away with, and then what are all the 1,000 little steps that we need to plan out to get there. And our interns, the 25 last year, had an amazing experience. Each of them talked about how this was one of the best experiences of their life. And I think part of it is because they were really engaged every day, and there was never like a big gap where they were just doing things on their own and figuring things out. So it's definitely a different setup.
Yeah, that's great. And you made a really good point about internship or about working remotely, and that is you really have to manage by outcomes. And so starting with those outcomes, I think that's a fabulous idea as to how to really make it work.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. So Pam, tell me, can you give us a quick overview of what adaptive communication is and how it influences virtual management?
Yeah, so the short story is adaptive communication is based on this process communication model, and there's about 40 years of research behind it, discovered by psychologist Dr. Taby Kaler. And what he identified is that there are 6 different communication styles. We call them channels. And essentially, we can use all these different communication channels, but we prefer some of them to a greater or lesser degree. I think the easiest way to think about communication channels is like walkie-talkies. When we're on the same channel, it's easier for us to hear each other. When you're on one, I'm on another, it makes it a little bit more challenging. And the other reason, and this is super relevant right now, is that when those walkie-talkies have been out of their base all day long, the batteries start to drain. Like I got a new phone a few months ago because I kept plugging my old phone in and it would never hold a charge. And that's the effect of stress on us and our ability to communicate efficiently. So, there's some data out from Gallup that 60% of people are feeling worried on a daily basis, and like 65% are feeling stressed on a daily basis. And so what we know is that that affects our communication, because associated with each of these channels are a particular set of words and phrases that we use, a certain perceptual reference. But the most important thing right now is that there are certain distress patterns that we fall into when we're feeling stressed out. And so when you know what those are and you have the tools to be able to do something about it, it's like that little dummy light. on your gas gauge in the car. You can listen for what you're saying. You can observe some of your own behaviors and say, uh-oh, I know that I'm now in a place where I'm feeling stressed out, and that's going to make our communication more difficult. So for intern managers, knowing, hey, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling pressured, now is probably not the right time to have that conversation. And if I have to have it, then I got to make sure I take care of my own needs first. And that's the most important thing, particularly when we're managing from home, to make sure that we're aware of what those stressors are and do something to take care of them. And we have lots of ideas about how you can, but that's kind of the short version of adaptive communication and why it matters in the midst of lots of stress.
Cool, that makes a ton of sense. You know, we're all individuals with different personalities and different styles and different stress levels, and it makes so much sense that if you can build a framework around that to help people manage themselves and manage others, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So thanks for that. Now, Amir, I wanted to ask you, Upkey has created this program for the students for those summer internships. Can you tell me, like, what kind of work are they doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really designing this to be sort of like a mini MBA. So the 8 weeks curriculum will have kind of 8 themes, and each theme will have kind of sub themes. So these are skills that we consider, you know, entrepreneurial / leadership, and we think of them as timeless skills. Things like financial literacy, or how do I build my brand, or how do I work in teams, how do I launch a new company on my own, how do I expand my network and build social capital. And so we're really kind of hitting on topics that will allow these students to land much stronger on their feet, regardless of what major or what background they bring to the table. And of course, the curriculum and the projects and the initiatives and the assignments that are done by these students are going to be related to those topics on a weekly basis. So whether it's a few companies that have offered to give us some of their own projects, or it's just simulations that we've been building with University of Chicago and Stanford and Kellogg to make sure that these students walk away with that content. It's not a traditional internship in that they're not just doing work. We're literally bringing learning back into internships. There was, I think, a time where people took an internship so that they could also learn in addition to work. And it's really going to be a nice 50-50 split for the students.
That's great. Well, thanks you guys so much for being here and for having this conversation with me. Where can people find you if they want to ask you some extra, some additional questions about your company or your initiatives? Pam, why don't you let them know? And then Amir.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great place for me. So Pam Baker, Journeous, and we do have some virtual training set up for intern managers who want to get a better sense of what this adaptive communication is all about, coming up in June. So you can reach out to me for more information on that. Happy to share.
Great.
Yes, and I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Amir Badr, but happy to receive emails. And my email is amir@upkey.com, and that's amir@upkey.com.
Great.
Thank you, Amir. I meant to throw my email in there as well. Pam at Journeous. So it's JOURNEOUS. And I will say just a quick shout out. We are super excited to be partnering with Upkey on their virtual internship program. It's an awesome initiative. It's one that is so needed. And, I think as Amir said, it's a great opportunity not only for students to get experience, but to get lots of skills that are lifelong skills. So.
Yeah, that's great. And we too at College Recruiter are helping Amir get the word out on these internships by posting those jobs out there. So thanks so much for this conversation. If anybody has any questions for me out there, I can be reached at faith@collegerecruiter.com, or like these guys said, on LinkedIn too. So thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you both
Thanks
for your
for, thanks for all you're doing. It's great. Cool.